call on this. Okay, what did we think of that?
Well, it's this summary at the end where we only remember a very small part of what constitutes experiences of the day. That struck me as, wow.
One of the most fascinating things on the, I think it was on the Click program on BBC, where they were talking about this, where we just perceive everything we see goes through into our brain and so on, but the brain actually filters a lot of what we sense out and just takes snapshots of what the brain thinks is important. And this is actually a trick that magicians make major use of. They actually do things, and there are things right in front of you which you don't see or perceive because they know how to distract you from perceiving them. And this is how you think they're doing magic and doing things that are impossible when it's actually very, very simple explanations behind what they're doing. It's just that you are not perceiving what they don't want you to perceive. And they're very good at manipulating the human senses in that way. That is how they do their job. And then, of course, a lot of tricksters and so on, con artists, they use the same effects. So, yeah.
I think that was the most, that's one of the most important revelations for me, to understand that incredible paradox of just, wow, what did I do today? I mean, I was really busy today, with some important stuff. If I have to record it now, I don't think I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Derek?
All right. Go ahead, Jenny.
For my 2 pence worth, I think the whole fundamental thing is all about survival. And there is so much input to the human body, particularly when you're awake, that you can't have it all the time. You can't think, I'm wearing a top, I can feel the sleeves, I'm wearing a top, I can also feel this chair I'm sitting on, I can feel the chair I'm sitting on. All that sensory input is pouring in, and we physically can't deal with it all. So from a survival perspective, the brain filters out the stuff that we need to know. So if sitting is becoming uncomfortable for whatever reason, if you've been sitting in a chair for too long and the blood supply to your ear is being compromised, then that becomes more conscious because it's a threat to survival. But as long as a lot of the stuff that we experience is just there and it's not challenging our existence potentially, the brain filters it out and ignores it because we couldn't physically deal with all that information that's coming in. You don't hear the birds outside until they sort of smash the window because you can't cope with all that information. So that's why we filter it out.
Yeah, so this is, I think, what the brain's very good at. It's noticing change, but the things that are happening continuously and, as you say, aren't critical to your survival, they sort of get ignored and filtered out. So yeah. And in fact, what can happen is if there is suddenly a lack of signal of something, suddenly everything goes quiet, and then you get a fright and go and want to know what's going on. What's this loud silence about?
There's several routes and pathways in the nervous system which respond to change. And for instance, if you are just sitting, the message that's going, you're sitting, you've got pressure on your bottom, you're sitting, gets sort of forgotten. But if something changes about the sitting, the nervous system then picks that up and you get the message, my bottom is sore because I've been sitting too long. Yeah. And a lot of nerves, like touch, our touch sensors only send a message about touch because something has changed. You could sit with your fingers resting on a table, and if you just leave it there, eventually that sensation or that awareness disappears.
So I think we've got.
Then if you increase the pressure or something taps your finger, then suddenly you're aware of it. So these nerves that are actually affected by physical change to the stimulation.
So I know with the nervous system and touch and so on, there are actually basically two systems. There's the sort of short-circuited system and the control system, which goes from the muscle, from the say the sense of touch through to the brain, and then back to a reaction on the muscle. But then there's the automatic system where your muscles react without the signal going to your brain first. For example, if you touch something too hot by mistake, your hand automatically jerks away from it without first having to get to your brain, think, oh, there's something hot, I better move my hand. And by that time, it's too late, you've burnt yourself. So that autonomous system, I think, it acts on its own. I think that extends often to a lot of the stuff. I know I do. I go through like a whole routine of, you go and brush your teeth and go and shower and shave. And then you're done and you put in your shirt on and you think, but did I brush my teeth? And you can't remember whether you've done it, but you can't remember whether you've brushed it.
Yeah.
It was all automated.
Yeah. Well,
you've got to go and check, is your toothbrush wet? Was my wife going to shout at me that I didn't brush my teeth?
Yeah. But the sort of the reaction that you have, say, when you stand on a sharp thing or you put your hand on a very hot surface and you instinctively recall, again, it's all about survival. Everything is geared towards survival. And I think if you think about it in that context, it makes a lot of this very complex stuff more easier to grasp, or maybe I don't, because it's my perception and it may not be yours.
And the thing about color is,
and we'll see differently.
The color is interesting to me. I think so. When I see the color red, as the guy keeps on saying, to me that what I'm sensing is a frequency, and my brain is putting a label on it of giving it that shade of red. But it's a frequency, and somebody else might be seeing the exact same frequency, but their label is different. But I will never know exactly how it looks to them compared to what it looks to me, because I can hold up something red and I say to a person, I see this as red, how do you see it? And they will also see it as red, because they're seeing the same frequency and they've labeled it as such, but it might look to them what looks to me like green. You'll never know.
But may I just come in here, please, Derek? I think we're all thinking about Jenny's comments about our feelings, about the physical feeling. It's amazing how closely we all experience exactly the same thing. I'm sitting down and I was conscious of what Jenny was saying, and I think we all experience those same feelings. And getting to the color, there would be a very interesting experiment. He mentioned the range of reds from one side of the reds to the other. And I think if we all had to put a strip on the ground with all those different reds and pointed a stick at which each one of us saw, we would be amazed how accurate our perception of that color is. And I use an example of people going into the Amazon jungle and meeting a tribe that has never had contact with humans before, and they see a red bead and they want that red bead because it matches something that they found in the jungle of exactly that color. So we seem to be very narrowly attuned to perceive the world almost the same way. And to me, that means it lessens the confusion about living. But going to memory, I think that's in the daily memory. What always intrigues me greatly is if you stand up in court at a murder trial and somebody says to you, where were you on December the 5th, 2022? People seem to be able to give an answer. And from what we've all been saying, I think that's probably always very made up, those answers we get about what happened in the past.
Yeah, I seem to remember reading somewhere that actually most of that witness evidence and so on, actually more than half of it is wrong, because people's memories fade and they think they remember clearly everything that happened, but it actually didn't happen like they think they remembered. So actually, I mean, it's taken as a sort of gold standard first-hand evidence given by a witness, but most of that is actually very unreliable.
That's right.
Because of the way the human brain works.
Mm.
And then the other thing we've also got to remember, even between humans, different humans have different levels of capabilities of sensing things. Some people have got better hearing than others, or hear frequencies, or hear different frequencies compared to, and animals are very different. There are animals that can sense ultraviolet, and there are animals that can sense infrared.
What about spelling nuclear?
So it all depends, as you say, it's linked to evolution. What is important to the animal or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, Derek, if I could just, I was quite interested in what he said about perception and prediction, because I think we have an experience, and that experience teaches our brain a certain thing. So we have a memory of that. And then that's how you develop a bias towards something. You experience fear when a certain experience is recalled, and then you experience a fear because your brain predicts the fear. And I mean, this is the way the algorithms work, isn't it? That YouTube or whatever uses.
Yeah.
They predict. It feeds our biases. I'm sure everyone has noticed how you read a newspaper and you have a bias towards a certain subject. So immediately it can be predicted that you will go for that article.
Mm.
Yeah, and behavior tends to reinforce that bias, and that's what the algorithms pick up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic, really, that the guy brought up. But personally, I think I prefer to just carry on with life and not agonize about these things, because it's one of those things that I feel, yeah, it's just the way it works, and just accept it.
Enjoy your day, Derek. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just
Derek,
one.
the thing is, that may be acceptable, but you've got to accept that in the same experience that everyone may receive. For instance, if you're sitting in a lecture hall, if we listen to that talk that guy's just given, every single person who hears it or sees it is actually going to experience and remember and understand and perceive what he said differently. And that makes it, potentially quite difficult to communicate with people, because you might be talking about the same thing and the language may be similar, but you may not actually be talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
and that's
I agree.
the complexity.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jenny. We always hear what we want to hear, almost.
Yeah.
But just another thing, I can remember when I was very young, I was being at the dinner table, and people are talking, eating, and interacting, and then someone may be reading a book, and you're told that's rude to read a book at the table, so you don't do it. It's trained out of you. But somebody once said to me that actually a young child is able to listen, see, and read all at the same time and take it all in, and we train them out of that ability. And when Jenny just now was talking about not hearing the bird outside, I think that's a classic example. And you can do a very simple test with yourself. You can look at the television and you can hear what the person's saying, and there's a strip across the bottom which gives you the other news. If you put your hand, if you obliterate the TV signal, the picture, you can hear what the guy's saying and understand what is being displayed on the reading bar at the bottom. It's an interesting experiment. You should try that. I think we can do two things, but not three. And because I think when we were young, it was almost trained out of us.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just a natural way the brain works, David. I think it's just, you can't have too many signals of senses that you're being sort of focused on at the same time. They can go into the background, and if another signal suddenly changes radically, you can switch to it. But this is the reason why it's dangerous to drive and talk on a cell phone. And I think it's equally dangerous when you've got two, I'm going to be prejudiced and say, you see two ladies in a car in front of you and they're talking animatedly to each other, then you've got to be aware that the driver might not be focusing 100% on the road around them and might swerve, and you've got to be sort of aware of these things. It's just as bad as talking on a cell phone, or a person driving. I know myself, if I'm driving along just listening to the radio and suddenly there's an interesting topic and my brain goes off and at a tangent starts thinking about what they're saying, and then I forget to notice that, oh, the light has turned red and it's not green and I almost stopped too late, sort of thing. So I think it's definitely, the brain is just can focus on two streams of major information at a time, whether it's sound or sight or something else. If something else is important and you're not focused on it, and it can be dangerous, it's sort of something we've got to be take cognizance of. So Jenny's gonna rap me on the knuckles for saying two ladies talking in the car, but
no, you made the apology.
There's another experiment. If you traveling behind someone in a zone of, say, 80 kilometers an hour, and all of a sudden they start going 70, you can be sure they're talking on their cell phone.
Yeah.
And then they speed, and they because they're off the call. It happens regularly.
Yeah, they just don't realize it at all. That's the problem. Yeah.
I think it may be also the nature of the activity. If you're doing something fairly simple, like for instance, I'm often doing crosswords and things when I'm watching TV. I find it actually helps me concentrate. But if I was trying to read and listen to television at the same time, it's not going to work because your brain, you need more cognitive function.
Yeah.
To do both. Whereas if you're doing something like a knitting, a lot of women, again, I'm being sexist, but a lot of people who knit, and they find it actually helps them concentrate because it's a very low-level, routine, repetitive activity, unless they're having to do something fancy. And in fact, it then frees up their brain to listen to conversation or to watch a film and things like that. So again, it's how much stimulation you're getting. If you're trying to answer the phone or dial numbers on a phone and watch the traffic, you are heading for trouble, as you say. But if you just got a nice piece of music on and you're driving, it's less likely to be a problem, I'd have thought.
Yeah, I think that, just to get back to the cell phone thing, I think the whole thing of not holding the phone in your hand and then putting it down, but still talking on the phone over Bluetooth, I think it's 90% of the same effect. You're concentrating on the conversation you're having, not on the road. Your brain is not 100% focused on what's happening around you on the road, even though you're talking over Bluetooth.
Yeah. Even on the other hand, you're saying we do a lot of stuff on autopilot, and people drive on also drive on autopilot.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the same extent that brushing your teeth, but there's a lot of stuff that we just leave, and we just become habitual, and a lot of people drive without much thought to things. So this is what this whole subject is about.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
And how we deal with the world around us.
Jenny, this morning I was listening to Fine Music Radio, and the announcer or the presenter was saying, for the matrics that may be listening this morning, this is good music to play whilst you're studying. And I thought, no, I wouldn't think that is true. If you're listening to good music, you listen to music and you don't study. The announcer was assuming that you could do both at once. Can you study and listen at the same time?
I think there's evidence that you can. And again, I know people who studied for university with rock music pounding away, and they could study. If I had anything on in the background, it would have to be very quiet and still, and ideally, in fact, no sound. But some people can, again, it's a very individual thing. But I knew students who used to have music on really loud, heavy rock music. And I said, doesn't this distract you? And they said, no, it helps me focus.
But that music I'm listening to, that loud rock music,
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even just have thought of it, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
some things are
Jenny,
soothing and they might give you a nice background, but some people like it really loud.
Yeah, I would, sorry, a slightly different topic. I would agree with Jenny that sometimes doing two things help you concentrate. So if I'm ironing or if I'm listening to something, it would sometimes be easier to doodle at the same time or make a little sketch. That somehow your brain absorbs it better, you concentrate better on what is being said than if you just sat there with your hands folded.
So listen to the teacher.
Yeah.
All the times when I got into trouble for fiddling around in the class, it was actually a good thing, and the teachers were wrong.
Well, I'll give you an example of something I do. Anyone who's sat in a lecture with me will notice that I write notes, and people comment on it. And the one reason I've got into the habit, apart from the fact it can be useful having a written record, but I find it actually makes me listen to the lecture or the talk or the presentation, because I found I could sit through something, walk out at the end and have no idea what it was about, because I was physically in the room, but my mind was elsewhere. Whereas if you're writing something down, the message is having to go through your brain. You may not remember it all, but you're activating the nervous system and actually moving your hand around and putting words down. And I find if I don't write stuff down in lectures, like I've been doing sitting here now, I could walk out and not remember anything. So I've sort of become almost programmed to do this. And it actually helps me focus by making notes.
Well, I'm completely the opposite on that one. If somebody's giving a lecture and I sit and start writing, I cannot hear what they're saying while I'm writing.
Yeah, you see, this is the thing. It's all so individual as to how people live within the world that we live in and how we deal with information that's coming in and sensory information.
And
it's one of the problems with education, because we tend to lump everybody in as the same. And you get this, the teacher comes in and says X, Y, and Z and teaches maths and walks out and assumes that everyone in the class has understood it in the same way, etc. But you've got 30 people in the room or whatever the numbers are. Every single child will experience and perceive what they've been taught in a different, unique way for all sorts of reasons. And it's very difficult to recognize those individual elements when you've got 50 or 30 children in a room.
Yeah. And as a different individual, I find I get bored very easily. And if I'm driving, if I'm driving through the countryside, I like to look around and look at the farms and what's happening and what's growing and what's the farmer doing on his tractor. I'm not looking at the road, so it makes me a bad driver. But I struggle. I struggle to stay focused on things. So that's a sort of I suppose ADH, or what do they call it?
Well, not necessarily. This is the thing. Human beings are all unique. We're obviously, basically, as David pointed out, structurally the same. We all have cells and things, and we all have nerves that work in certain ways, and we see color at certain frequencies. Red is red, but it's the nature, it's the degree of redness and the nature of that redness which varies on a perceptual level. Because as you say, we see color in frequencies. But
okay, I see Peter's got his hand up. Peter, have you got a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention just the fact that in pilot training, one of the most difficult things we had to learn was scanning. So you had to scan your instruments, you had to operate the aircraft, the radio, etc., and listen to the controllers giving their instructions and so on. And all this going on all at the same time, we were actually taught to only concentrate on one thing at a time, but shifting our concentration from, say, from the artificial horizon to the radio, and then back to the altimeter, and then the instrument landing system, and so on. And it went. You had to continually change your viewpoint from one to another to another. And I think this is where the difficulty comes in operating a cell phone, for example, as you were talking about in driving a car, the people are concentrating on the one thing and the one thing only, and not shifting to check up on the other things.
Mm. That's interesting. So you're suggesting that it's a skill that you learned as part of the nature of becoming a pilot. So it's something we can actively do.
Well, we had to learn, otherwise we would be chucked out. You know.
Yeah.
So
that is
there are
actually how
ways of actually
multitasking
managing.
works, it seems. Then you're switching,
Yeah.
you're continually switching from one input to another, and that's you're not simultaneously catering for a whole lot of inputs. You're switching from one to the other.
Yeah.
that's right.
So I think that's, I've occasionally watched some of these accident analyses, aircraft things on YouTube and so on, and I think that seems to be where you get the pilot error, actually, where people succumb to something where they've just got too many inputs they're trying to cater with 5 or 6, and 2 or 3 of them are critical, and they're just not dealing with them, and the plane ends up diving into the ground or something like that.
Well, I think flying probably is a sort of extreme example of how you've got huge amounts of information coming in, as Peter says, but the consequences of getting it wrong are huge as well.
It can change rapidly and become dangerous very
factors,
quickly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sort of, it's the same if you're wielding knives and things, or doing something in a kitchen. It's a much more risky environment than if you're sitting chatting in the lounge.
Yeah.
And so it's how you deal with all those elements and keep an eye on the stove and make sure that this is working, and has the microwave on, and did you put the plates in the thing? And some people can do it and some can't. Some people can multitask, others struggle.
So the essence, the skill in multitasking, then is obviously being able to switch rapidly from the one input to the other continuously.
Yeah. But also absorbing, it's being able to, it's not just being, it's not just, what have I heard, what have I seen? It's actually being able to process that information very quickly and also make decisions about, for instance, with Peter's example, you look at the altimeter, you look at does this matter? Is it important? And then you move quickly on. So you've got to make a decision about the information you've received and are looking at in a very short space of time. And then you don't move along onto listening to the air traffic controller if you've realized that the altimeter is not telling you what you expect to hear or to see. So
there's definitely a sort of personality trait in very good fighter pilots and very good Grand Prix drivers.
And
they're always very calm all the time. They never get extremely agitated and excited about anything. They're always in control.
Yeah.
David, go ahead.
Some people have the capacity and others don't, and they go off and do other things.
Yeah.
Jenny, is it David or Elaine? Yeah. Go ahead.
It's me, thanks. I was just thinking of Peter's example. Now, the activities he mentioned are all related to the same activity in a certain way. They're all related in ensuring safety. But if one's doing something and someone interrupts you with something totally unrelated, and you have a couple of those interruptions, that kind of fries my brain, quite frankly.
That's where you have to prioritize.
Yeah, my problem has always been in a conversation. I've got to really, really concentrate hard to listen to what a person's saying, because they make some comment and then my brain thinks, oh, that's interesting. And then it goes off on a tangent. If my brain has got a mind of its own, so to speak. My brain starts thinking, oh, what's the implication of this? And it starts analyzing something else based on what the person was saying. But now, meantime, he's saying something completely different and I'm not taking it in. And then he asks me a question and I look at him blankly and I don't know what the hell he's asked me about.
Elaine accuses me of doing that all the time. I've just done
one of the things I have found great difficulty with is many productions of a PowerPoint where the speaker will be rattling away and virtually reading from the script that he's written up on the PowerPoint. And I find my concentration desperately trying to either listen to the speaker or read. The
Yes.
last presentation we had at Honoris Manor, that guy was excellent in that he didn't have a huge amount of script. He spoke his address and he had graphs, etc., to support that. So he didn't have two things exactly the same and you're trying to separate them.
Yeah,
Good lesson.
Yeah.
yeah. I agree with you 100%, Peter.
Yeah, that was brilliant. All right, have we got anything else? I must thank Peter again for an excellent choice of topic.
Absolutely riveting.
So
Yeah.
thanks for all the expert inputs, Dr. Morris, etc.
Well, can I just finish something, Derek? I'm just listening to this, thinking about this conversation we've been having with, I don't know, 4 or 5 people contributing. Each person has identified individual differences about how they react to things and how they deal with things. And I think it just illustrates the fact, or provides some support for his assertion that every person's reality, their self, is unique to them. You know, we're all human beings and we all have some, you know, we have a lot of fundamental things in common. But the way we exist as ourselves is very individual. And I think that just, you know, reinforces, you could put us all in the same situation and we'd actually experience and perceive it in our own unique way, which provides some support for his argument.
Oh, that's a very absolute spot-on observation.
But I've seen other presentations by the Seth guy before, and he's actually quite a sharp guy. He makes very sort of perceptive and interesting presentations. So yeah, thanks for that again for that, Peter. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Derek.
Anybody else, or can we wrap it up? It's
Thanks for
on to
everybody
7.
joining us.
Thank you. It was really worthwhile joining in again. Looking forward to the next one.
Okay, I have recorded this discussion afterwards if anybody wants a copy of that at some stage.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Derek.
Well,
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Derek.
you
Thanks,
for your
Peter.
attendance.
Thanks a lot, Derek. Thanks for your help.
Cheers. Enjoy your evening.